All right. I think we're almost there. We are live. Okay. Good deal. All right. So, as I said earlier, today has just been a day of beautiful synchronicities between the messages and the prayers and the meditation. And it has just been wonderful. And as we move into the inspirational message for the day, I hope that you catch on to the synchronicities that I saw. So last week we talked a lot about the presence of God and the presence being around us and in us and protecting us and guiding us and leading us and the assuredness that we have that protection all the time. And we brought into the discussion the unity prayer about the light of God surrounding us and the power of God protecting us. So I want to continue on that theme of recognizing the presence of God in everything with this particular message today. And what inspired me for this message is the term namaste. And I say term namaste because it's not like our words. When we say good and it means good, right? The namaste in the Hindu language is a little bit different. Their language conveys concepts and not just words. So I say term as it relates to the word namaste. And to me, namaste is one of the most beautiful words in the human language. I love this word because of what it expresses. So in the contemporary era, nama means to bow or do a reverential salutation or to express adoration. And the other part of the word te means to you, right? And therefore, namaste literally means bowing to you. But in Hinduism, the faith took it a step further, and they recognize that it is important to reflect the belief that the divine and the self is the same as in you and me. And they call that divine and the self the Atman and the soul. And so, therefore, as they take namaste, it connotates I bow to the divine that's in you. This is a simple concept. It sounds easy, but there is so much power in this one word. And that power comes when we begin to recognize the truth of what it's saying, that the Spirit of God lives in each of us. And because the Spirit of God lives in each of us, we begin to understand that no form of human interaction is accidental, good or bad. The interactions are designed to push us further along in our journey. So, in this way, every human interaction is a sacred act of creation that reflects our God power. Because as we learn in Genesis, one of the qualities of God is the ability to create. With God in us, we have the ability to create, and we choose what we create through our interactions. Now, some of our actions create love, and some of our actions create hate. Some of our actions create peace, while some of our actions create chaos. This is the challenge of creation. When we fail to walk in the awareness that God resides within all of us and that we do have the power to create, what we create tends to be hit or miss. Sometimes it creates pain, sometimes it may create joy. But through grace, sometimes we can pull off a great experience. But oftentimes, when we're unconscious of this power, we do not. It's like planting a garden when you know absolutely nothing about gardening. To make matters worse, you decide to grow the most sensitive plants in the garden, like roses. not realizing that they need the soil to be handled in a particular way in order to grow. Your rose bushes may actually grow once you plant them, but they're not going to be the beautiful, thriving roses that you might see in somebody else's garden, or they may actually begin to die. And once they begin to die, all the work that you failed to do in the beginning will now have to be done. And there is a great possibility that your efforts are a little too late. However, recognizing that God lives within each of us helps us to be more mindful of what we create. And that way, what we create is more lasting and is more worthwhile. Imagine the same garden, and excuse me for a moment, I think I have a lash in my eye. Imagine the same garden being created by someone who has studied roses and learned about them. They have consulted experts and gathered the necessary tools and ingredients to make the soil a hospitable place for the plant to thrive. They have the right plant food, the type that nourishes the plant so that the garden they create is beautiful and thriving. This is what it means to create human interactions or relations in the awareness that within each of us is God. We consider the needs of others. We develop the tools to interact better, and we place value on the presence of others. Honestly, I have to ask the question, would we be so quick to hurt each other if we knew that we were hurting our divine creator? And even more so, that we were hurting ourselves because of the God that lives within us. Now, I want to bring in a discussion of Jesus's at this point. Jesus, in one of his master teaching sessions, explains the concept of namaste to the Pharisees. He reminds them of three very powerful concepts. First, when he's asked the question, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus replies in this way, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Now, so many people remember the other two phrases, and they're going to be familiar to you when I get to them, but they skip this important piece. The Lord is one. In this way, in bringing this first, Jesus establishes the oneness of the all, that God is in all things, appearing as all things, and manifesting in all things. It is important to understand this concept of oneness in order to truly understand what he says next. Because as one, there is no division, no separation of God. God can only be all, and that all that there is in order for God to still be God. Furthermore, all that there is has to be connected in order for it to be one. I know this is a challenging concept to the lower mind because we are trained to see things as separate. We see animals as separate from us. We see people as separate from us based on all kinds of things: race, culture, ethnicity, age, sexual orientation, Myers-Briggs scores, introversion and extroversion. But the hardest one of all to accept is simply the fact that because of one's skin color is on a different scale in the spectrum of colors, we are convinced that we are separate and therefore should be treated differently. The truth is that we are just like a rainbow, all drawing from the same light, just reflecting it differently. As the Hindu expressed in the term of namaste, God is in it all, and therefore it is all connected. Now, Jesus goes on in this conversation, and he states that next we should love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. In truth, this statement and the next are but repetitions of each other. As we love God, we love the all, everything, the good and the bad, the right and the perceived wrong, those that are like us and those that are not, because we recognize the God in them. As I talk about this, I am reminded of a question that was asked in First John, where the writer asked, how is it that you can say you love God, who you have not seen, when you hate your brother that you have seen? Again, reflecting the divine oneness of the all. This brings me to our next powerful concept that Jesus taught. Jesus taught that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. Loving our neighbor as ourselves can be probably the most difficult of all, because we must first learn to love ourselves and understand just what that means. Loving ourselves means to truly embody the truth of who we are. Outside of the titles, outside of our educational attainment, outside of our financial status, the things we own, how we look, and even our day-to-day actions. See, some people get caught up in saying that, oh, I'm so good, I'm so perfect, and so I can love myself more, which automatically creates a scenario where somebody who isn't so good and so perfect has to love themselves most, less, pardon me. So loving ourselves cannot be about that. It has to be about that thing that is never changing, that always is constant in our lives, and that is that reflection of God. So to love ourselves takes us back to the beginning of what I call a riddle, this answer that Jesus gave. To love ourselves is to truly love the Spirit of God that lies within us. And in this way, we love that voice that guides us to do better. We love that unction to seek greater knowledge and wisdom. Loving ourselves entails embracing that part of us that is eternal, to the point where we allow it the freedom to be wholly manifested in the world around us. As we allow our true selves the freedom to be, we automatically do the same for others. As we accept fully who we are, we give permission for others to do the same. Recognizing the divine spirit in them as it manifests into this physical reality. Now, Jesus' words to the Pharisee was that there is no commandment that is greater than these. And in reality, if we could just master these, all we may find is that we created heaven existing on earth. Conflict, while it still may arise, could be resolved in love, understanding, and mutual benefit. But it all begins with you. As Michael Jackson once said, we've got to start with the man in the mirror and anchor our minds in this awareness. So, how do we anchor this consciousness within our minds when so many things reinforce the understanding of separation? First, we release all those things that keep us from being free. For example, those limiting beliefs that we are helpless to change our circumstances, or that we are victims of a world that others created for us. We release our attachments to identities that have been imposed on us by those seeming to have our best interest in mind. Now, oftentimes people didn't want to hurt us, but they wanted us to create an image that they felt was right. But what we need to do is figure out and create our own identity based on the truth that has been placed inside of us. Each one of us have a divine nature. Each one of us have a divine calling, and each one of us have purpose in being on this earth. Secondly, we grow daily in our own awareness of who we are. See how the one leads into the other? We embody the Christ consciousness so that we know without a doubt that we are one with God. We reprogram our minds through affirmations and knowledge. We test these programs like a computer analyst or a computer scientist test what they create on their computers. So we test our programs just like they do through acting upon it, executing it, believing until we see a different result, believing in its success until we see a different result. Finally, we identify our triggers that cause us to respond in fear. Now, it's funny how the world sees fear, because oftentimes it is used to make people think of monsters and evil clowns chasing us in the dark and trying to kill us. That's what most people associate with fear. Or like with me, snakes. I have a fear of snakes. But fear goes even deeper than that. And the way that you know when fear is being expressed is that fear starts to look like things like anger, hostility, resistance, broken communication, suspicion, blame, and true lack of authenticity. Amazingly, one of the things that I've seen the most is that when people are staring in the face of real love, love can trigger some of the deepest fears in someone that has never experienced it. So we must learn to look our fears in the eye and face them head on by living in the very things that we fear. Now, this is where I'm going to take a moment and use some technology here. We tested it earlier. It seems like it's going to work pretty good, but cross your fingers. I want to share a video from the Oprah Winfrey Show on Super Soul Sunday. The show featured a young man who was amazingly the first blind mountain climber to scale Mount Everest. His name was Erik Weihenmayer. What he says about fear is phenomenal. So I want to take a second to share my screen and show the video. Give me just 1 minute. And then I will pull up the video.
In this week's Super Soul original short,
Everybody good?
an enduring moment of courage captured by award-winning filmmaker Louis Schwartzberg. Louis filmed renowned mountain climber Erik Weihenmayer while he trained to become the first blind person to summit Mount Everest.
I love to climb mountains, ice climb, rock climb. And that's pretty wild, I guess, for a blind person. I mean, being a blind mountain climber is sort of like being a Jamaican bobsledder. You know, the words don't necessarily go together. Some people collect, you know, like antiques or baseball cards. For me, I just like to sort of collect experiences, just soak in as much as I can. When I'm climbing, the scariest part is when I'm reaching out And I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to find. I mean, I'm hoping and praying and predicting I'm going to find what I'm looking for. But I think sometimes that fear of reaching out into the unknown paralyzes people to the point where they just decide not to reach out at all. And for me, all the great things that have ever come to me have come through reaching out into that unknown. Okay. When I went blind, there was a time that I thought that life was filled with a lot of loss and not a lot of gain. But I actually learned sometimes things are taken away and sometimes things are given to you, and you have to appreciate the things that you have. At some point, I let go of the things that I couldn't do, and I began to focus on the things that I had. And once you realize all the things that you have, your life is just completely full.
Eric reached the goal and became the first blind mountaineer to top Mount Everest. He has since climbed all of the famous 7 summits, the highest points on each continent.
All right, so now I'm gonna stop sharing and go back. Isn't that just the most amazing story? I mean, to think there are no limits, right? Here he is, blind and feeling his way, climbing up a mountain, assuring us that there is no limit. Now, the reason I showed this was because letting go of our fear and limiting beliefs and taking on the consciousness of seeing God first within ourselves and then in others, then loving that expression with all of our heart and mind and soul creates a freedom that is beyond measure. But because the way of being is so foreign to us, it can at first feel like what he said, reaching out into the dark. We never know what we might find if we reach out. Granted, everyone isn't aware of nor willing to embrace this mindset. However, for those of us who are aware, we must begin to reach out. Eric Weinmeier would have never made it to the peaks of Mount Everest had he not been willing to reach out into the darkness. So, if we never take the chance to walk in the spirit of Namaste, we are assured to never see the manifestation of God in our lives or others. But if we try, just like Eric, we might find ourselves getting glimpses of the kingdom around us. And as we continue to stay in that energy and that conscious, that glimpse will eventually expand and expand until we reach the highest peaks, until God with us is revealed in us as all we see. Namaste. Let us take one moment to close our eyes. And if it is your will to do so, make an agreement at this moment to embrace the God that is. To experience it fully, to allow it the freedom to be. Begin and release. To allow that spirit that is within you to expand and expand until it overflows from you. And then give yourself permission to see others in the same way. Even when they don't express it as you believe they should, even when we don't understand the manifestation. Let us give them grace. Let our expansion include the consciousness. And then as we sit, I want us to embrace the hope in the possibility that the world can be different than what we see. That hate and anger, although it seems so embedded in this world, can one day be eradicated. Breathe in the possibility and release the old mindset. We allow the spirit within us to have its way, to grow, to be expressed, to be manifested to its fullness within us and within the earth. And so it is. Amen. All right. So I am going to turn off Facebook Live. Close it out. We can go back to being normal. Go back to being normal. And just, I hope you truly felt that. That was, to me, when that message came to me, I was just like, wow, this is so important to gather, so important to embrace, and so important to get, especially now in this time and in this age. So, as we have done in the past, this is our time to think about giving. We know that we cannot go through the act of giving at this time, but we can affirm the gift and affirm the receptivity of the gift and affirm the value and the beauty of the gift, right? And I want to remind everybody that if you would like to give, all you have to do is go to Spirit-Led Life Center. There's a tab on the website that says Support Spirit-Led Life Center. You click on that tab, and there is a secure PayPal link for you to give as you see fit. And so in this moment, we operate in that awareness and in that love, and we express the affirmation of giving as it reads: divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and all that I am. And so it is.